Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wolfpacker Show. My name is Ethan McDowell. I am here with Noah Fleischman, and we are here to preview another week of NC State football. The Wolfpack is 3-3 for the first time since 2013. Noah, this is as much of a turning point as you can find in the early part of this schedule. The Wolfpack is halfway through its 2024 season, and it is going to match up against one of the more surprising teams in the ACC this year. Syracuse is off to a 4-1 start under first-year head coach Fran Brown. We are going to preview everything about this matchup. We're going to bring on a guest this week, Rachel Culver, a producer from CNY Central up in Syracuse, to talk about the matchup and make our predictions as we always do. Before we do that, I want to quickly mention that we're both writers for the Wolfpacker.com. That is NC State's site on the On3 network. Whether you're looking for basketball analysis from Media Day, for the men's and women's teams, Noah was there, talked to them both, and wrote a bunch of great stories up on the site. We have recruiting scoops. NC State is making positive strides with a 4-star offensive tackle right now. If you want access to that, access to our message board community, and everything else that the Wolfpacker.com has to offer, go check it out. I implore you to go see it. We're going to talk about everything that we think about this game. We get way more in depth on the Wolfpacker.com. It is well worth the price of admission over there. So once again, it's the Wolfpacker.com. Go check it out. All right, Noah, let's talk some football. Pivotal game, in my opinion, for the Pack. This is a tough matchup. Syracuse has the number 2 passing offense in the ACC, one of the more impressive transfer quarterbacks this season in Kyle McCord, and a solid running game that they don't use much, but still a running back capable of hurting them on the ground as well, and some mismatches in the receiving game in Trevor Pena and Aronde Gadsden. We're going to get into more of the details when we talk to Rachel in a few minutes, but I want to just get your initial thoughts on this matchup and how you're feeling about the Pack going into Saturday night.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those games that I think it just doesn't match up well for NC State. NC State's running defense hasn't been great, and Syracuse, though it doesn't lean on its rushing attack a lot, LaQuint Allen's averaging 5 yards a carry, 4.9 yards a carry, on the ground. That does some damage against NC State's defense that has struggled to be consistent on the run game. And then through the air, NC State's banged up. Jihad Carter's was back for a little bit, at nickel this past weekend. But Brandon Cisse was out. He has a cast on his arm. So we don't know when he'll be back. Dave Doran declined to share an update on the injured players, which he doesn't have to, and he won't. So that's that. But, it kind of concerns me a little bit. They do have depth at corner. We saw Devon Marshall has played well. Yeah. But just without your starting corner, it's kind of hard to play against a team like this that will air the ball out. Kyle McCord will look downfield and push the ball. So we'll see what happens. Overall, going into it, I think it's just not a great matchup for NC State defensively, having the worst scoring defense in the ACC playing against one of the most prolific offenses, to this point of the season, in Syracuse.
Yeah, I'm with you there. In terms of just like the passing, like Syracuse is an awesome passing team. NC State actually has a great passing defense. You mentioned Brandon Cisse potentially missing this game. If you're going to miss a starter at any position group really on this team, cornerback's probably the place it hurts you the least. But also, there's a legitimate argument that Cisse's been their best corner this year, and he's definitely someone you'd rather have there, especially with his ability to move inside, right? Pena, their leading receiver, plays over 80% of his snaps in the slot. Gadsden, he's either in line, but he spends around half of his snaps in the slot too. It's probably going to be a lot of dime looks for NC State's defense, and their dime package, in my opinion, is really good when you can have Brandon Cisse in the slot, right? So if you're missing him, I think that is a disproportionately huge blow against a team like Syracuse, that is going to air that ball out. They are going to throw it a lot. They have the number 16 rushing offense in the ACC right now. But like you said, that's because they don't run the ball much. Their running back, LaQuint Allen, correct? He just doesn't get the ball a ton, but he's effective when he does have it. So it's going to be a matchup to watch for sure, just to see how NC State's defense holds up, because they looked solid at times against Wake Forest, but that game obviously unraveled as it got late. So we're going to get into predictions later in the show, Noah, but we're going to talk about some matchups, talk about the kind of the trajectory that Syracuse's program is on, because it looks like they are headed up and away for a program that has only had, I think, 2 winning seasons in the past 10 years. Like, it's been a struggle for Syracuse as a football program, but they are off to a good start this year, and we are going to bring in Rachel Culver right now to talk about it. Here is our conversation with Rachel. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Wolfpacker Show. We are now joined by Rachel Culver, a news producer over at CNY Central up in New York. She's also a producer of the Orange Zone podcast, a podcast all about Syracuse athletics. So we thought she was the perfect person to bring on the Wolfpacker Show and help us preview this game. Rachel, welcome to the Wolfpacker Show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we just want to dive right into the preview of this matchup. Syracuse obviously 4-1 this season, coming off a big win in overtime over UNLV. A really fun game to watch. We had a lot of fun seeing the Syracuse pull that one out. So far, 5 games in, a little less than half the season in. What has this first season under Fran Brown been like for the Orange?
It's been like in a renaissance in a way, I guess I would say, here in Syracuse. I think Syracuse fans are reinvigorated around Syracuse football in a way that I haven't seen in a long time. Fran has really, through his recruiting class and his work in the transfer portal, put in a lot of work to bring together a great team that is really feeling like it's starting to click on a lot of cylinders. Fran has been just so good with the community and bringing people around not only football, but Syracuse. He was so involved in community efforts leading into the season. He was at coat drives. He's been so outspoken about just wanting to be approached and like welcomed into this community as more than the football coach, but a member of it. And I think that's really showed in how this first 5 games have played out this year.
Yeah, you talked about the transfer portal. They used it pretty well to find a quarterback in Kyle McCord. What has he, done for the Syracuse team coming from Ohio State?
Who's Kyle McCord? No, Kyle has been incredible. I mean, he's the epitome of a pocket passer, right? Like seeing even just going back to that UNLV game that you mentioned, the way that he was just able to kind of gash defenses, like right from the beginning of that game, he's been great. Obviously leading this high-powered offense in so many ways. And there's other weaknesses across the border, but just the way that he's been able to not only show his power with his arm, but we've also seen a few rushing touchdowns and seeing him kind of get out of what he was at Ohio State and really transform into what Syracuse needs him to be, and how he's willing to kind of do whatever to make this team win. Even in press conferences and everything, you can tell how much he cares about this team and how much he has invested in coming here. And it's been great.
So statistically, McCord is the best deep ball passer in the country on throws of 20-plus yards. There is no one better right now in college football. Is that the strength of his game? What would you say that Kyle McCord does particularly well on the football field?
Obviously, his strength comes in his arm. But I think what I've really noticed in the first few games is the connections he's built with his receivers. I think so much of it goes in film and how he studies the game. And we've really seen that connection kind of play out early with wide receiver Trevor Pena. He's been kind of a sleeper for the past couple seasons. He had a couple of difficult seasons and faced some injuries, but he really came out of the gates this season, and you can tell that he and Kyle clicked early because they studied the game in similar ways, and that's been something they've both talked about in press conferences and that Fran's also talked about in press conferences. But yeah, I mean, he's number 2 in the nation right now in terms of passing yards, I believe, with 369 yards per game, and it's number 27 scoring offense in the country. That's not a stat you would normally see associated with a Syracuse team. This is definitely out of the normal when it comes to that. But one of my favorite quotes from Fran so far this year came after the first game, actually, and he wanted to send a bottle of champagne to the head coach over at Ohio State for letting them get Kyle McCord, and that certainly has been something that has paid off.
For sure. You kind of talked about the air attack and using Pena, but they also have, Rondé Gadsden, one of the more prolific tight ends in college football. What have you seen from him this year, being healthy again and being able to play, every game?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been, I mean, obviously, when you're playing Syracuse, every defense is coming in aware of Verande Gadsden, like you said, one of the most prolific tight ends in the country. So there's been definitely a few games, I would say Stanford was one of them, where he was quiet. I mean, obviously, he's facing a lot of double teams and things like that to shut him down, but I think UNLV was a really good showing for him, and what he was able to do in that game is hopefully what we see more and more of as we continue going here through the season.
Gadsden is one of my favorite players in the country. He's someone that, yes, he's at Syracuse, and yes, he's putting up big numbers. He could play, I think, literally anywhere. You can put him on any school in the country, and he would be a playmaker. He's really, really good so far. So far this season, he has 26 catches for 359 yards and a few touchdowns. It's been a little up and down in production for him so far, but like you said, against UNLV, 10 catches for 142 yards. Like, that was a breakout year for him at 6'5", 236 pounds. That man is a unit, and state fans should know him well. He went off against the Wolfpack 2 years ago with, of course, current Wolfpack offensive coordinator Robert Anae leading that team. So that's going to be a fascinating matchup. We're going to see what NC State learned from 2 years ago on how to cover him. They've got, a redshirt freshman playing nickel right now, guarding slot defenders, named Tamarcus Cooley, who has been really, really good over the past couple games. Are we going to see him match up against Gadsden? That's going to be very, very interesting. That's going to be something Noah and I are going to be keeping a close eye on in this game. Really excited to see how that pans out. Turning our attention to the defensive side of the ball, I wanted to ask about just what you've seen from that unit. The stats don't necessarily jump off the page for Syracuse's defense, but they've only allowed over 30 points once this season, and that was last week against UNLV in overtime. So what have you seen out of that unit? What are some of the strengths and weaknesses of that side of the ball?
Yeah, so absolutely. I believe they're allowing around 26 points per game. So like you said, only that one game over 30. I think that puts them around 13th in the ACC, which is not great. There's definitely some things that need to be sorted out when it comes to the defense. In our first game against Stanford, we lost Marlo Wax, who's obviously the captain, kind of leader of our defense, and a big part of that. So he's definitely been missed on the line. And with red zone defense, that's one thing that's particularly stood out to me as of late. We started the season really strong on the red zone and really kind of stopping those scores when you got to that point of the field. But as of now, red zone defense ranks tied for 112th in the country, allowing points to score 94.1% of the time. So that's a concern, especially against UNLV in the late fourth quarter. We kind of saw how easy it was to get down the field against this defense. And I think the biggest issue that so many Syracuse fans are fed up with is the missed tackles. After contact, there are so many instances where these offensive players are just able to get through first contact and get more yardage. And I think there's just a frustration with the amount of, Fran Brown's made such a point to stress the aggressiveness that he wants out of these guys, and we're not seeing that when it comes to tackling. We're seeing so many missed tackles, and I think that's probably one of the biggest issues when it comes to this team right now, on the defensive side especially.
So going off of that, I don't know about you, but that kind of makes my ears perk up of, if they're struggling to tackle, like it's going to be tough to stop KC. KC, obviously one of the more elusive players in the country out of the slot. What do you think, Rachel, is Syracuse's plan going to be to slow down KC Concepcion? Like, how do they usually defend slot receivers, and what's that matchup going to be like?
I feel like a big emphasis will be put on the way that Fadil Diggs performs. Obviously a transfer in, one of the transfers that Fran was able to grab from the portal. He's been, since Marlo went down in the first game of the season, probably the biggest asset we have on defense. He's just so elusive. He gets his way around the field, and he's our biggest asset on defense. So I think you'll definitely see a lot of him when it comes to covering KC. But I think it's all gonna depend on just how aggressive this team can be when it comes to just making those stops that we haven't seen them make.
Yeah, you talk about Fadil Diggs with 4 sacks this year and 27 total tackles. Who else stands out on this defense? Without a guy like Marlo Wax being out there.
Yeah, we have names like Jaden Bellamy, and there's actually been a lot of injuries too with that. I think he went down in the UNLV game, but he should be good to return. Fran Brown has really made a point of every guy's going to earn his spot when it comes to this defense.
I also wanted to ask about Syracuse's kicking game. That's been a struggle so far this year. They've tried multiple place kickers, and they have yet to make one beyond 33 yards. I haven't watched every Syracuse game. I haven't watched every kick this season. But what's going on with the place kicking situation?
Yeah. So UNLV was obviously a problem on the punt. There was obviously 14 points scored off of mistakes made on that end. I think there was a lot of frustration with our special teams coach that was very clear on Syracuse Twitter and things like that. I think it all comes down to the line that's protecting those guys. I think in the first instance where we had he didn't even get the kickoff actually, and he kind of took yardage and was tackled. And then it took 2 plays for them to score their touchdown there. But I think that's a smart decision. I think he knew that kick would have been blocked and resulted in a touchdown, which we then ended up seeing later in the game anyways. So I think it comes down to the line that's protecting them, and that also kind of applies to the same line that protects Powell McCord. There's been issues with how he's been sacked a couple times. So I think I place less blame on the actual performance of the kicker than on how the kicker is protected.
Interesting.
We've talked about the offense, the defense, and special teams. What do you think has to go right on Saturday night for Syracuse to win a game? For their first game outside this year, not
it's interesting to think about. Everything has been under a dome, but I think what has to go right is I want to see a complete game from this team. I think we've seen really good spurts on offense. Obviously, offense has won us our games for the majority of the season this year. But seeing a complete game would really be something that I think the entire fan base and everyone who follows this team is looking for. They can come out strong. We've seen them come out strong in first quarter and then come back for the second quarter and really lull, and vice versa. And I just think just to see a consistent play across 4 quarters is what we're really, really hoping to see. And that includes involving everybody on the passing game, not only Trevor Pena, but Aronde Gadsden and even LaQuint Allen. LaQuint Allen has been huge for us in the run game, and he really, really stood out against UNLV with his 2 touchdowns there. But I think it all has to come together on defense, especially.
Yeah, I think those are all things that NC State would like to see in this game too. But we're going to put you on the spot here, Rachel. We want to hear your prediction for this game. We're about to make our predictions in our next segment. But who do you see coming out with a victory in this game, and what's your final score?
Yeah, so I actually had Syracuse losing this game. We did predictions leading into the season before first game, and we went through every game of the season, and we did predictions on our Orange Zone podcast. And the way we've decided to do it this year is that we have one mulligan. So you can go back on one of your predictions going into each game. I'm not going to go back on this one. I'm worried about the road environment here. I'm worried about playing outside. NC State is notoriously a loud place to go in and play. So I am having Syracuse losing by a touchdown, 31-24. Right? That's the correct math there.
Awesome. Well, Rachel, thanks so much. We really appreciate your time, and good luck with coverage for the rest of the season.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Wolfpacker Show. I hope you all enjoyed our conversation with Rachel Culver. Just so you know, you all can find her on Twitter right now at Rach_Culver, and that's RACH_Culver, CULVER. So we really appreciate her joining the show, and now it is time for our own predictions. Noah, up front, we both picked NC State to lose this game. We're going to talk about why, and I know it's unorthodox, but I want to start with our final score predictions, man. I want to talk about why we think NC State is going to lose this game and drop to 3-4. Floor is yours, Noah. What's your score, and why do you see NC State losing this matchup?
Yeah, I have NC State losing 30-14. I just think they won't be able to keep up with, Kyle McCord and pass the ball downfield. NC State has the worst scoring defense in the ACC, and nothing has really shown to me that they'll be able to stop a, high-powered passing offense like Syracuse. So that's where I'm at. I'd love to be, disproven on Saturday night, but going into the game, that's where I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that. I have a little more faith in the Wolfpack offense going into this game because I do like what I saw out of the passing offense last game. I thought they were starting to give CJ more and more liberties to, make reads, make calls, and like Dave Doran mentioned it in his Monday press conference. There was a lot of RPOs in this game. Like you saw, eight receivers had at least 2 receptions in the first half alone. And a lot of that was, it sounds like, because NC State was calling a lot of runs with RPO with pass tags. So CJ had the option to, whether it was during the play or often before the play, make a read. And I was talking to Alec Lauer from the Trinity Road Times. If you don't read his stuff already, you should. He's really good with the X's and O's sort of stuff about this yesterday. But it seems like they're giving CJ a little more chances to make those reads on his own and just kind of work the quick passing game on early downs. So we're not just seeing NC State running into the line of scrimmage against these stacked boxes. When CJ sees a loaded up box, he can hit the quick out to Wesley Grimes or Noah Rogers, right? And I think that's a really positive step forward for the offense. They averaged over 6 yards on first downs against Wake Forest, but it's asking a lot to ask this offense to keep up with Syracuse's explosive passing attack. Like you said, right now NC State has the worst scoring defense in the ACC. They gave up 34 to Wake Forest, and of course the 2 50-point explosions as well. It's going to be, I think, a challenge, even with the positive strides NC State has made in pass defense as the season has gone along. I think they've gotten pretty good in that department, but Syracuse is a whole different beast right now. They are slinging that ball and doing a really good job. And they're on the field. They were on the field for over 100 plays against UNLV, man. Like given the injuries and the lack of depth right now on the defensive line, it is asking a lot of that unit also to just hold up for an entire game if NC State cannot get the running game going. Even against Wake Forest, the worst running defense in the ACC going into that contest, they were not able to generate much consistent success. And if you can't do it against Wake Forest, until I see differently, my stance is that I don't really believe you can do it against any ACC school. So until proven differently, I think it's going to be impossible or very difficult for NC State to establish a consistent rushing attack that keeps them ahead of the sticks and helps control the momentum of this game. And if they are unable to do that, I have a very hard time seeing them beating Syracuse. Can they beat other teams doing without a consistent running game? I think so this year, but Syracuse is not one of those schools. So I have them losing 38-31 in this contest. CJ has another good game. We see him continue to grow. The outside receivers have a good day. Maybe KC has a breakout performance, but that is not enough because I think Syracuse's offense will be able to do enough against NC State's defense to leave Carter Finley Stadium with a victory. All right, so those are our game score predictions. And now every week we also like to predict who's going to lead the team in rushing, receiving, and tackles. Noah, let's start off with receiving this week. Who do you have leading the pack through the air this week? Justin Jolie has strung together a few great games, and he now leads the pack in receiving.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Justin Jolie. It's just a game that could be decided by tight end play. In this game, I really think this is, a battle of 2 of the best tight ends in the ACC. Give me Justin Jolie to lead them in receiving yards, but I don't think he leads them in receptions. Last game, he only had 4 receptions for 73 yards, and a touchdown. I think we could see another big play at him and have, 4 or 5 receptions, but, get close to that 100-yard mark again.
He's become like the most reliable deep threat guy too. In addition to being someone who, is a good safety valve for yards after the catch, between, 0 and 10 yards from the line of scrimmage. he's also the guy where you can kind of be like, all right, let him go make a play. That's what CJ did on Justin's touchdown last week. He threw it up there and let the big tight end go up and make a contested catch. You touched on it on the website, and I think you also mentioned it on our last show of how good he's been in contested catch opportunities this season. So I think that's a good pick. And, I forget if we said before the season he could lead the team in receiving touchdowns or receptions or something like that. But I think we were, on the pulse there. He's a really, really good player. And I would not be surprised to see him continue his recent hot streak at all. I'm picking a KC breakout game. I think this is, Rachel mentioned it on our previous segment. Syracuse has struggled tackling this year. And if you're struggling to tackle, that's something that KC can really take advantage of, right? He has made a living so far in his football career off of breaking tackles, running through arm tackles, and having folks that when defenses don't swarm to the ball against him, that's when he makes these game-wrecking plays. And I think this will be a big game for him. He'll snap out of his slump because NC State has had him open a lot downfield on a few shot plays over the past few games. They just haven't been able to connect. Yes, I know the pop passes and the screens aren't working, but he is getting open downfield. They just need to keep finding him. And I think that they will be able to find him against Syracuse, and I think he will be able to get a little more success on those short plays than he has in past weeks because Syracuse is not a good tackling team. So I'll pick KC here. Breakout game for the sophomore, a bit of a return to form for him. What about rushing? You've become a huge proponent of Kendrick Raphael this season, Noah. You think he has been really, really great. I agree. But are you going to pick him to lead the team in rushing again this week?
Yeah, I am. I think he's going to get more snaps than he has in the past as being the rushing. He had equal carries with Jordan Waters. Was that, intentional? Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but it proved, a little bit that he's got a little bit more, ability right now to pass him on the depth chart. We don't have a depth chart. Haven't had one in a few weeks, but he leads the team in rushing yards per attempt, missed forced tackles, broken tackles. He does a lot on the running ground. I think he's proven that he can do it. And give me Kendrick to do it. I don't know if he has a career day. 90 yards is his career high. I don't think he gets that far, but I think he does enough to lead them in rushing.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm also picking him. I think he has been the most consistent, most explosive, most elusive running back for NC State. So because of that, I think he's going to have the best day. NC State has shown a willingness to ride the hot hand in the rushing attack, right? That's one position where I feel like it truly doesn't matter who starts the game because they will stick with whoever's hot. And over the past 4 games, I'll lay it out for against Louisiana Tech, Jordan Waters had 10 carries. Raphael had 9. Against Clemson, Waters had 7. Raphael had 10. Northern Illinois, Waters had 8. Raphael had 7. And then against Wake Forest, it was split even 10 and 10. I think you could see that number start to shift towards Kendrick a little bit. And he's earned that. He has played really good football over the past couple of weeks, and he is making something out of nothing on some plays, taking what the defense is giving him in terms of just, vision and choosing holes and exploding through the opportunities he does get, and he's making defenders miss. So I think all of that considered, he will lead the team in rushing, and they need him. They need him to continue playing at that rate because he is the pretty much lone bright spot in the rushing game right now for NC State. What about tackling? It's a lot more complicated than last year, right? Like last year, we were able to kind of just point to Peyton Wilson every week, the occasional Jalen Scott game. Sean Brown led him in tackles 1 week, but this year it's kind of been all over the place. Aiden White led the team in tackles last week. So who do you think is going to make the biggest impact defensively, tackles-wise, and lead the pack in that category?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Caden Fordham. I think he's just one of the most consistent defenders in the tackling space that they have. He's done really, really well. He's had at least 8 tackles in every single game that he's finished, because you can remove game 1 where he played 4 or 5 snaps and got ejected for targeting. But he's had at least 8 tackles in every game that he's played full 60 minutes, including 2 with 10 or more. So give me Caden Fordham to tackle. He's tackling in space, especially against, a guy like Aranda Gadsden, who he could end up lined up on in some situations. That could happen. He also just might have to tackle in space, especially in the run defense if LaQuinn Allen gets the ball and gets going. So give me Caden Fordham.
Yeah, I'm going to go with kind of this might not happen, but I'm going to put it out there more because I want to emphasize it to our listeners and our viewers. I'm going to pick Tamarcus Cooley here. Not usual to have a nickel lead you in tackles, but I think there's going to be a lot asked of Tamarcus in this game. Because I mentioned it on the last segment. Syracuse's top 2 pass catchers both play in the slot. He's going to have to cover both of them. He's going to have to cover them a lot. He did not allow a target in his direction against Wake Forest. I think that's probably not going to be the case against Syracuse just because of how much they funneled the ball to Gadsden and Pena. But I think if NC State wants to stay competitive and limit Syracuse's offense, they need to limit yards after the catch. Those Pena and Gadsden are going to get the ball. NC State needs to keep those, quick passes from turning into 15, 20-yard gains. And I think that's going to put a lot on Tamarcus Cooley's shoulders. And I think he could lead NC State in tackling this week. I think that is very much on the table. So I'm going to go with Tamarcus here, who I think has been one of the best players on NC State's defense over the past couple games. I think he has been phenomenal. All right, folks, that is today's show. I appreciate you all tuning in and watching and listening. And we will see you Sunday. We'll be back on your podcast feeds to recap everything that happened between NC State and Syracuse. And again, appreciate you tuning in, and we will see you in just a few days.